Time has a way of making us feel small, as if everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, living according to some invisible standard. You scroll through milestones, compare accomplishments, and suddenly your own path feels stalled, as if progress has abandoned you. Yet the Stoics remind us that the world does not run on a single clock. Each life follows its own rhythm, and measuring yourself against someone else's journey is a guarantee of frustration rather than growth. What matters is the timeline you choose to honor through effort, discipline, and presence. Every struggle, every delay, every quiet day spent preparing unseen is not a sign of failure. It is evidence that your foundation is being built stronger than anyone else can measure. Marcus Aurelius observed, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Feeling behind is never the truth, it is perception. Your resilience, your growth, and the quiet cultivation of your character are the markers of real progress, and no comparison can diminish them. Each moment you dedicate to deliberate effort, reflection, or learning adds depth to your journey. What may appear as inactivity is often the subtle accumulation of skill, endurance, and insight. The world may not notice, but your internal development is unfolding steadily, silently, and meaningfully. The challenge is to see it, to trust it, and to continue moving forward with purpose, even when the outcome is not immediately visible. For much of our early lives, we move together, step by step, almost as if time itself is a shared rhythm. We rise with the bells of school, move from one grade to the next, and measure progress by exams, assignments, and approval from those in authority. The structure is predictable, even comforting. There is a path, and if we follow it, we feel assured of being on track. Everyone moves together, and belonging reinforces the perception that life is orderly. Each achievement becomes a visible checkmark, each milestone a public signal that we are progressing. Even failure has boundaries here. It is contained, expected, something to correct, rather than a threat to identity. In these early years, pace is dictated externally, and the illusion of fairness is maintained. We rarely question it. We are told what matters and when it matters, and compliance feels natural, almost inevitable. This alignment creates a rhythm of safety and shared purpose, conditioning the mind to assume that success is linear, that steps are universally timed, and that life can be measured by a single ruler. Then the structure disappears. Exams end, graduations pass, first jobs arrive, and suddenly the pacing is no longer uniform. Friends advance, relationships progress, houses are bought, children arrive, and yet you feel stationary, as if time itself has left you behind. Milestones that once defined the collective path are now individualized. Linear certainty dissolves, leaving a haunting sense of lagging behind. But Stoicism reminds us that the external world is indifferent. It does not favor, nor does it judge. It simply exists. The perception of being behind comes not from events themselves, but from the judgments we place upon them. The mind measures itself against arbitrary markers, forgetting that life's path is neither uniform nor dictated by others. It is tempting to assume the world is racing past while you stumble, but the real thief of peace is comparison. When you measure yourself against external timelines, you lose sight of the work that occurs quietly, in hidden spaces, where effort accumulates unseen. Consider how perception shapes our experience of milestones. A colleague receives recognition, a friend announces a promotion, another celebrates a personal achievement, and the mind immediately compares itself to this standard. Yet it ignores the hours of preparation, the failures endured, and the internal struggles that remain invisible. Comparison always captures only part of the picture, focused on outcomes rather than process, appearances rather than substance. The gap that seems to exist is often nothing more than selective observation, filtered by anxiety and expectation. Progress continues quietly, even if invisible. Skills are refined, judgment is cultivated, resilience accumulates, and perspective grows. These invisible markers are the foundation of any meaningful achievement. By redirecting attention to what is developing within, we reclaim agency over perception. The Stoics teach that our internal state is sovereign. External events may press upon us, but they cannot dictate our sense of worth unless we permit them. The quiet work, the unseen practice, the patience that allows growth to unfold, these are the true markers of progress. The world neither advances nor delays us. It is the mind that interprets, and in choosing interpretation wisely, we find freedom. Comparison is often insidious precisely because it masquerades as clarity. We observe outcomes and assume they reveal a universal timeline, forgetting that each life follows its own trajectory, shaped by unseen variables. Timing differs, resources differ, challenges differ, and yet we standardize judgment as if a single template could measure every path. Feeling behind is rarely a reflection of reality. It is the mind's mistaken synthesis. By separating perception from fact and observing the world without adding judgment, a different understanding emerges. Progress is happening continuously, often quietly. Deliberate choices, skills honed in silence, resilience built through small, consistent actions. These are not immediately visible, and they may never produce a dramatic announcement, but they are no less real. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Internal progress, cultivated quietly and consistently, carries far more weight than any external signal. What the world sees is only the surface. What matters is the internal accumulation of skill, patience, and resilience, forming the foundation for long-term growth. The perception of lagging behind diminishes when attention is placed on deliberate effort rather than comparison. Each day of thoughtful action contributes to a trajectory that cannot be measured by a scoreboard, likes, or applause. Progress is personal, internal, and enduring. If these messages resonate with you, consider subscribing. It is a commitment to surround yourself with ideas that sharpen your mind, strengthen your character, and help you navigate life with clarity and purpose. By choosing to engage with reflections, insights, and Stoic wisdom, you reinforce the values that truly matter and take a conscious step toward mastering your own journey. The journey of life is non-linear, discontinuous, and often imperceptible in its advancement. While others' achievements appear immediate and tangible, your own progress may be quiet, gradual, and invisible. The mind's urge to compare magnifies only the visible, ignoring the hidden efforts that form the foundation of lasting growth. Each step you take, even when unnoticed, compounds into resilience, skill, and understanding that will eventually manifest in tangible outcomes. The misperception of delay arises when one forgets the value of the invisible work, when the mind equates recognition with accomplishment, visibility with worth. Stoicism emphasizes that true progress is not contingent upon external validation, but upon the integrity of action and thought. In recalibrating perception to honor internal development, the notion of being behind dissolves. What seems like stagnation may, in fact, be preparation, incubation, and fortification. Recognizing this allows patience to replace anxiety, deliberate effort to replace frustration, and presence to replace the illusion of delay. By observing without judgment, by letting comparison fall away, a new clarity emerges. You notice that the steps you've taken have never ceased. The work has proceeded quietly, unseen by those around you, accumulating in ways that will eventually reveal themselves. External markers are unreliable. What endures is the cultivation of virtue, wisdom, and resilience. The Stoic approach teaches that measurement is internal, rooted in consistent effort and reflection rather than external milestones. This understanding reframes the experience of time, struggle, and achievement. The perception of being left behind is replaced with recognition that each choice, each effort, and each learned lesson contributes to a trajectory that is uniquely yours. There is no universal timeline, only the unfolding of the path you are actively shaping. By focusing on what is under control, your thoughts, your actions, your judgments, the mind finds peace. The world's indifference no longer threatens. Only perception governs experience, and perception can be guided with wisdom and care. Ultimately, the feeling of being behind is an invitation to reflect, to reclaim agency over judgment, and to align attention with internal growth. Each unseen effort, each quiet skill developed, each choice made with intention is evidence of progress. The Stoic perspective reframes life as a series of exercises in virtue and resilience rather than a contest measured against external markers. By attending to what is within control, by cultivating attention to effort, reflection, and character, the illusion of being behind is dismantled. The mind, when disciplined and aware, recognizes that each step, however small, is meaningful, and that comparison is an unnecessary distortion. What seems like delay is often the slow unfolding of competence, judgment, and insight. Through this lens, the path is continuous, purposeful, and aligned with the principles that lead to enduring fulfillment. It cuts deeper than we often admit. Watching others' lives unfold can make your own path feel hollow, as if every step you take is small, delayed, or insignificant. The mind instinctively searches for patterns, for benchmarks, and for validation, and in doing so, it often betrays itself. Comparison arises almost automatically, like a reflex, a way to locate yourself in the world. Social comparison, psychologists explain, is embedded in human nature. It is a shortcut for assessing our status, competence, or worth. But while the impulse is natural, its consequence is almost always distortion. The Stoics recognized the same tendency and warned that distraction masquerading as assessment leads the mind away from virtue and purpose. By focusing on external markers, we become prisoners of other people's lives, measuring our present and potential against criteria entirely outside our control. The promotions, the accolades, the visible successes, all of these are like shadows cast on a wall, shifting and incomplete. They reveal only what is visible, not the effort, endurance, and resilience that underlie each moment. We see the polished outcome, but not the process that shaped it. This focus on appearances is insidious because it seems factual. We scroll through social media feeds and see only the highlights. A promotion celebrated in pictures, a car purchased with pride, a relationship milestone shared publicly. The mind interprets these signals as truth, as evidence of universal timelines and collective standards, yet these are curated fragments. They omit struggle, mistakes, moments of doubt, and the invisible hours spent learning, practicing, and enduring challenges. When perception is limited to these selective windows, the feeling of lagging behind is inevitable. In surrendering attention to these fragmented narratives, the mind gives away its own authority. The life you are living is eclipsed by the story of someone else, even if that story is incomplete, edited, or embellished. By constantly calibrating your value against these incomplete signals, you relinquish control over your own growth. You measure yourself by outcomes you cannot influence, creating stress, envy, and frustration, all while ignoring the quiet, meaningful work unfolding in your own life. Consider the subtle ways comparison shapes thought and emotion. You might feel proud of a personal achievement, only for that pride to dissolve when you encounter someone else's highlight. A sense of accomplishment is overwritten by the shadow of someone else's moment. This is not a reflection of objective reality. It is a reaction conditioned by habit, by exposure to selective images, by cultural emphasis on measurable success. The Stoics would call this the mind's misdirection, a failure to distinguish between what is within control and what is not. Here, reaction becomes the fulcrum of perception. The events themselves are neutral, neither good nor bad. What causes suffering is the mind's interpretation, its uncritical adoption of external signals as measures of worth. By choosing where to focus attention, by reframing the lens of perception, the same events that once caused anxiety can instead be seen as irrelevant to internal progress. Recognition from others is never the measure of growth. Only the cultivation of skill, character, and intentional effort counts. The scoreboard of life is private, and its metrics are invisible to all but yourself. It is in these quiet, unnoticed moments that true development occurs. The work that builds strength, endurance, and wisdom rarely generates applause. Learning a new skill, practicing patience, cultivating self-control, and reflecting on mistakes are processes that appear static to outsiders, yet they accumulate over time. Just as a tree grows silently underground before breaking the surface, the mind and character develop in ways imperceptible to anyone but the individual tending them. By turning attention inward, by measuring against your own effort rather than the lives of others, you reclaim authority over progress. Growth is no longer dictated by arbitrary comparisons. The sense of being behind diminishes because the only timeline that matters is your own, shaped by consistent effort and reflection. The pace of development becomes a personal rhythm, independent of external events, resilient to appearances, and grounded in deliberate practice. What seems like a delay is often preparation. What feels invisible may be foundational. The Stoic principle is clear. Internal mastery precedes and outlasts external validation. Even when society rewards visibility, it rarely accounts for sustainability. A promotion, a celebrated purchase, or a public accolade may signal achievement, but it does not reveal depth, endurance, or resilience. These markers can vanish as quickly as they appear. A person may be ahead in public perception while struggling privately, while the effort you make quietly continues to compound unseen. By calibrating your self-assessment against superficial measures, you fail to honor the work that truly matters. Comparison produces anxiety because it focuses on transient outcomes rather than enduring qualities. It measures only what is visible, not what is being built, trained, and strengthened beneath the surface. Recognizing this is liberating. The metrics of others' lives are irrelevant to your own path. The mind, when redirected to internal progress, discovers a rhythm that is both sustainable and resilient. The illusion of being behind fades when attention is redirected to self-guided development, where each effort, however small, contributes meaningfully to the whole. Ultimately, the habit of comparison is a misalignment of attention. The mind turns outward to measure worth against unreliable metrics, creating suffering where none inherently exists. Social signals are fleeting and partial. They are fragments of reality interpreted through selective exposure. By returning attention inward to effort, reflection, and character development, the mind finds clarity and peace. Real progress is invisible at first, unfolding gradually, measured in resilience, judgment, and competence. External appearances will never fully capture the depth of experience, nor should they dictate perception. The Stoic path is to focus on what is within control, thoughts, actions, and responses, while letting the rest fall away. The mind's investment in internal growth is durable, meaningful, and impervious to fleeting measures of others' success. What once felt like falling behind transforms into the slow, deliberate accumulation of strength, wisdom, and presence, invisible to all but the one tending it. In this understanding, the measure of life is reclaimed and the perceived lag dissolves into the quiet rhythm of self-guided progress. Even the smallest acts of indulgence in comfort can shape long-term trajectories. Scrolling endlessly through content, postponing tasks, avoiding difficult conversations or decisions, all of these reinforce the illusion of sufficiency. They suggest that the present is acceptable, that tomorrow will bring opportunity, that growth can wait. Yet the human mind is sensitive to repetition and reinforcement. Each day of yielding to comfort strengthens its hold, while the discipline required to challenge it weakens with disuse. Over months and years, this creates a life in which the familiar feels safer than the unknown, the routine preferable to deliberate effort, and inaction more comforting than pursuit. The paradox is striking. What feels protective, what seems reasonable in the moment, is precisely what limits expansion and potential. The perception of safety is deceptive. Comfort is subtle in its approach, but relentless in its effect. It is not the absence of hardship that is harmful. It is the voluntary avoidance of challenge, the surrender to ease, the passive acceptance of mediocrity that erodes the capacity to act. The paradox of comfort is illuminated further by reflection on time and opportunity. A year spent in the comfort of routine may feel unremarkable in the moment, but its effects compound, creating patterns that define future capacity. The days, weeks, and months spent resisting challenge are not lost. They are investments in endurance, insight, and skill. Conversely, days surrendered entirely to ease create deficits that take effort and discipline to correct. It is often only upon reflection that the cost of comfort becomes visible, the paths untaken, the ideas untested, the strengths unrealized. To feel behind in this sense is not a reflection of failure imposed by the world, but an invitation to examine where energy has been deferred, where courage has been postponed, where the self has acquiesced to what is safe rather than what is possible. Awareness of this dynamic is the first step toward reclamation, toward deliberate action that shifts the trajectory of life away from passive sufficiency and toward conscious growth. Feeling behind is often misinterpreted as misfortune, yet it is better understood as a signal. It is an indication that life is calling for deliberate action, that untapped potential exists beneath layers of habitual ease, that character is being invited to manifest through effort. The presence of comfort reveals the precise space in which challenge is necessary. By confronting this quietly and consistently, the mind discovers that what seemed like stagnation is actually preparation. What felt like delay is the incubation of skill, and what appeared as limitation is, in fact, opportunity. Every choice to resist comfort reshapes perception, recalibrates ambition, and reinforces agency. Growth is not immediate, nor is it always visible, but it is cumulative, durable, and transformative. To feel behind is not failure, it is awareness. To act deliberately against comfort is not punishment, it is investment. The mind, disciplined in this manner, begins to perceive time and progress differently, recognizing that what matters is not external markers, but the cultivation of effort, skill, and resilience. By embracing struggle deliberately, one converts apparent delay into meaningful preparation, transmuting the subtle chains of comfort into the foundations of strength and endurance. Perspective is the antidote to envy. Recognizing that the outward display of success does not equate to inner satisfaction changes the entire orientation of thought. The person ahead may appear to move faster, achieve more, and live more fully. But this does not reflect the quality of their inner life. What they gain externally may come at the cost of peace, wisdom, and integrity. It is possible to achieve milestones while the spirit feels empty. Conversely, slow progress, unseen effort, and quiet discipline often produce a depth of satisfaction invisible to others. Carl Jung reflected on this dynamic in the human psyche, noting that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The real measure of life is not how one appears in comparison to others, but how one develops authenticity, insight, and self-mastery. The gains of another's path may be irrelevant to your own values. The question then is not how far others have gone, but whether your own path fosters depth, meaning, and resilience. This recognition allows the mind to act deliberately rather than reactively. It becomes possible to step off the treadmill of comparison and focus on internal metrics of growth. Effort, consistency, patience, and reflection become the markers of progress. Each deliberate action, however small, contributes to long-term development. By contrast, focusing exclusively on visible outcomes of others fosters distraction and discontent. Life is experienced from within, not as a series of external snapshots. Those snapshots, however impressive, are incomplete. They omit the unseen challenges, the doubts, and the sacrifices that accompany achievement. By valuing internal growth over external signals, the mind establishes its own measure of success, one resilient to perception, envy, and societal pressure. Understanding the hidden dimensions of life reframes the perception of being behind. The person who seems ahead may, in truth, be struggling under burdens unseen. Their achievements may come with costs you would not accept, or they may pursue gains that do not align with your own purpose. By internalizing this perspective, the mind can disentangle itself from judgment, comparison, and anxiety. Growth becomes the standard, not visibility. Effort, integrity, patience, and reflection constitute true advancement, independent of what is observable. The perceived gap between you and another is often an illusion, created by attention to surfaces rather than substance, to signals rather than process. The mind gains freedom when it shifts focus from external comparison to internal development. Happiness, fulfillment, and mastery emerge not from imitating others or racing to match them, but from cultivating skills, resilience, and character that align with personal values. Stoicism anchors this understanding in the practice of discerning what is within one's control and letting go of what is not. External signals, accolades, or milestones are beyond control. Your effort, your judgment, your growth are within it. When this orientation is adopted, the anxiety of appearing behind diminishes. One recognizes that the appearance of being ahead or behind is irrelevant. What matters is the depth, consistency, and alignment of one's own actions and intentions. Ultimately, the mind that measures against others forfeits its sovereignty. The person who chooses internal measures of growth reclaims agency, establishes enduring metrics of satisfaction, and cultivates resilience. Apparent advantages of others dissolve under scrutiny, revealing the hidden trade-offs, compromises, and struggles accompanying their milestones. Perspective becomes clarity. Observation becomes discernment. Life is then understood not as a comparison, but as a cultivation, a deliberate investment in what truly matters: wisdom, resilience, skill, and alignment with values. The perception of being behind is replaced with recognition of progress defined internally, independent of fleeting external markers. What once seemed enviable transforms into an opportunity for reflection, discernment, and conscious development, freeing the mind from distraction and aligning action with enduring purpose. Struggle is not an interruption of life. It is evidence that life is being lived fully. The sensation of difficulty, the resistance encountered in pursuit of effort, is proof that the mind and body are engaged, that growth is occurring, even if it is not immediately visible. To face discomfort is to participate actively in reality rather than retreat into safety. Every challenge, every obstacle, every moment that tests patience, skill, or endurance is a signal that the individual is present in the arena of life. It is tempting to equate struggle with failure, to assume that hardship marks deficiency, but this interpretation is false. The Stoics understood that adversity is a natural element of existence, and that character is forged not in comfort, but in deliberate engagement with difficulty. Each instance of effort that meets resistance is an opportunity to exercise judgment, to develop resilience, and to refine virtue. The friction encountered in pursuing meaningful action strengthens the mind in ways that ease cannot, creating internal resources capable of sustaining growth, creativity, and clarity over the long term. Facing struggle fully requires courage, for the natural tendency of the mind is toward avoidance. Humans are wired to seek safety, comfort, and predictability, and in the absence of deliberate action, the perception of threat can induce paralysis. Yet, the Stoics recognize that avoidance is a form of self-imposed limitation. Discomfort, while uncomfortable, carries lessons that ease cannot provide. It forces attention, sharpens perspective, and strengthens internal faculties. Each setback, each challenge encountered directly, produces a compounding effect over time. The mind that tolerates difficulty develops a capacity for judgment and problem-solving that remains unavailable to those who pursue only comfort. By stepping into the arena, the individual asserts agency and cultivates competence, learning that adversity is not a punishment, but an integral element of development. Struggle is also evidence of presence. To engage with life fully is to risk failure, to confront uncertainty, and to participate in experiences that are meaningful rather than safe. Theodore Roosevelt called it being in the arena, a place where one's face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood. This metaphor captures the essence of engagement. Effort must meet reality directly. The external world cannot be controlled completely, yet deliberate action within its bounds allows growth to occur. Each encounter with difficulty, whether personal, professional, or relational, strengthens the capacity for deliberate, skillful action. Progress is not measured solely by visible outcomes, but by the refinement of faculties, the development of patience, and the cultivation of judgment that is resilient in the face of variability and unpredictability. The presence in the arena signals that one is living deliberately, not reacting passively, and that the challenges faced are being converted into tools for competence and insight. Participation in life's challenges is inseparable from preparation for future growth. The experiences endured, the obstacles overcome, and the efforts exerted form a reserve of skill, knowledge, and resilience that will be drawn upon in future circumstances. Struggle is cumulative. The endurance cultivated today strengthens capacity for the adversity of tomorrow. The mind, habituated to engagement, becomes more flexible, more capable of observing without reactivity, and more resilient in judgment. The individual learns that the discomfort itself is not to be avoided, but navigated consciously. In this way, struggle is proof not of failure, but of ongoing investment, of active cultivation of faculties that underlie achievement, wisdom, and self-mastery. Psychologically, the interpretation of struggle shapes its consequences. When difficulty is embraced deliberately, it becomes transformative rather than corrosive. The difference lies in perception. The mind that recognizes struggle as training converts temporary discomfort into permanent growth. Each moment of engagement reinforces internal resources, strengthens judgment, and enhances emotional stability. Conversely, the mind that interprets challenge as catastrophe or as evidence of inadequacy experiences stress, anxiety, and diminished efficacy. By reframing adversity as an element of deliberate life practice, the individual reclaims agency, redirecting energy from fear into constructive effort. The process becomes self-reinforcing. The more struggle is embraced consciously, the more capable the individual becomes of navigating future challenges with calm, clarity, and efficacy. Ultimately, the presence of struggle is evidence that you are participating in your own life rather than observing from the sidelines. Each failure, each obstacle, each moment of doubt signals engagement, courage, and preparation. To step into difficulty is to assert agency, cultivate competence, and accumulate wisdom. The Stoics teach that life's arena is not a place for passive spectatorship, but for deliberate action, reflection, and growth. Each challenge faced, each discomfort endured, each risk taken. These are the markers of a life lived fully, and of progress measured not by external comparison, but by internal cultivation. To struggle is to be alive, to be present, and to build capacity for the life that matters. The mind, however, often misinterprets this process. In a society obsessed with immediate gratification and visible success, it is easy to feel behind. The hours of practice that accumulate in obscurity feel wasted because there is no instantaneous reward or external acknowledgement. Social comparison amplifies this perception. Someone else's advancement is visible, while your own preparation remains hidden. Yet the Stoic perspective emphasizes that what is unseen is often more significant than what is displayed. External outcomes, while gratifying, are temporary markers. The underlying competence, resilience, and judgment developed through sustained effort are permanent. The feeling of delay is often nothing more than the natural latency inherent in skill incubation. Progress is occurring, even if it is not immediately perceptible. The challenge lies in maintaining focus and discipline while the fruits of effort remain invisible. Consider the athlete whose training goes unnoticed. Each repetition, each drill, each correction of error may feel tedious and unrewarding. Yet these hours form the foundation for performance, endurance, and adaptability. The artist who revisits a single technique for months, refining and adjusting, is creating depth and precision that will reveal itself over time. The thinker who patiently studies, experiments, and reflects accumulates insight that informs judgment in subtle, powerful ways. In every case, the visible result is merely the tip of a vast structure built beneath the surface. The work itself, conducted quietly and consistently, constitutes the true measure of progress. External recognition is neither necessary nor sufficient to validate effort. The Stoic understands that the process is the priority. Outcomes are a reflection, not a mandate. The misalignment between perception and reality creates anxiety for many. The human mind is drawn to comparisons, to visible markers, to measurable results. Without these, effort can seem wasted, and the sense of lag can intensify. Yet this perception is flawed. What appears as delay is often preparation, an incubation period during which competence, judgment, and character are cultivated. This is why those who achieve lasting success rarely do so through sudden revelation. Skill, insight, and resilience are built incrementally, layer by layer, over long periods of consistent work. The mind that internalizes this perspective experiences patience, confidence, and perspective. What seems like stagnation is, in fact, deliberate accumulation, and the process itself is transformative. Even small, consistent actions contribute to long-term mastery. Reading for understanding, writing to clarify thought, practicing a technique repeatedly, engaging in reflective conversation, each of these may appear minor or unproductive in isolation, yet the compounding effect is immense. The mind trained in patience, the body conditioned through repeated effort, and the judgment refined by reflection collectively produce outcomes that are durable, adaptable, and resilient. The external world may not immediately recognize the accumulation, but the internal transformation is profound. The Stoic understands that mastery is an inside job, that visible outcomes are secondary, and that skill development is the primary measure of progress. There is also a psychological effect inherent in the acknowledgement of unseen work. Those who recognize the value of internal development cultivate focus, discipline, and perseverance. They understand that immediate recognition is unreliable, that external validation is inconsistent, and that true progress must be measured internally. This orientation creates resilience in the face of comparison, impatience, and distraction. By valuing the unseen process over the visible outcome, the individual aligns effort with principle, maintaining direction despite external ambiguity. This is the essence of Stoic practice: attention to what is within one's control, diligent cultivation of skill and virtue, and detachment from markers that lie outside one's agency. The perception of being behind is often amplified by impatience, yet it is a misunderstanding of timing and process. Skill does not manifest instantly. Preparation precedes performance. The mind that is disciplined and patient appreciates the latency inherent in development. Each repetition, each correction, each small success contributes to cumulative ability. External outcomes will eventually reflect internal preparation, but the invisible labor must be valued in itself. Recognizing the importance of unseen work allows one to persist without anxiety, to continue practicing and learning even when immediate results are absent. This is a defining principle of mastery: patience, consistency, and trust in the process. Marcus Aurelius observed that no man is happy who does not think himself so. Happiness, like skill, is cultivated internally, independent of external acknowledgement. Progress in competence, judgment, and character generates internal satisfaction that does not rely on comparison, applause, or visible achievement. The hours spent in patience, repetition, and reflection are investments in this internal state. The mind that appreciates unseen accumulation aligns effort with purpose, embraces the delay inherent in skill development, and finds satisfaction in consistent, deliberate work. Feeling behind is reframed as the natural timeline of growth, slow, steady, and ultimately transformative. What the world sees is only the culmination. What matters is the cultivation beneath the surface, the invisible labor that builds enduring capacity. Life does not unfold along a straight, predictable line. The calendar marks days and months, yet these are constructs imposed by human measurement, not indicators of progress, worth, or potential. The Stoics understood that timing, in its external form, is indifferent. What matters is the endurance cultivated along the way, the persistence maintained in the face of uncertainty, and the deliberate investment in effort and character. Some individuals appear to sprint early, achieving milestones that are visible to all, while others build quietly, their progress imperceptible to outsiders. Yet the ultimate trajectory of achievement is rarely determined by the timing of initial strides. Consistent effort, practice, discipline, and the accumulation of resilience produce results that emerge in their own time, often surprising in their magnitude because the world measures only what is visible. The external markers, the accolades, recognition, and milestones are unreliable indicators of true progress, for they omit the unseen variables: preparation, endurance, adaptability, and the internal cultivation of judgment and skill. Comparing oneself to others is an invitation to misunderstanding. When we observe the early success of someone else, it is tempting to assume that they are inherently ahead, that we are somehow delayed or deficient. Yet this comparison ignores the invisible dimensions that shape achievement, the conditions, preparation, and resilience that underpin another person's advancement are rarely observable. The effort invested, the failures endured, and the lessons internalized remain hidden from view. Persistence over time, even in obscurity, compounds like interest, building strength, skill, and judgment that the world will eventually recognize, even if the recognition arrives later than desired. Life is not a series of discrete races measured by external approval. It is a marathon of character in which consistency and deliberate effort outweigh speed or visibility. When the mind internalizes this perspective, the illusion of being late dissolves, replaced by the understanding that progress is a function of engagement, endurance, and the cultivation of virtues that endure beyond superficial measures. The rhythm of life is cyclical, and outcomes emerge not from a single moment of effort, but from the accumulation of many small, deliberate actions. Each day of focus, reflection, and intentional work contributes to the trajectory of mastery. The apparent absence of progress is often the incubation period in which competence, judgment, and resilience develop quietly, invisible to observers. The athlete who trains in solitude, the writer who revises silently, the thinker who reflects patiently, all understand that effort accumulates beyond immediate perception. Success is rarely sudden. It is the product of persistence, repeated practice, and enduring engagement with challenges over time. The external world may remain indifferent, but the mind that recognizes the value of consistent effort develops patience, foresight, and equanimity. Endurance becomes a metric more reliable than any scoreboard, and character becomes the true measure of achievement. Illusions of lateness or deficiency arise when one evaluates progress by visibility rather than substance. The mind seeks comparison, benchmarks, and immediate feedback, yet these markers are insufficient. External validation can be fleeting and misleading, offering only a partial view of reality. Stoicism teaches that the only reliable measure of progress is internal, effort aligned with principle, skill developed with patience, and character strengthened through reflection and persistence. By shifting focus away from external comparison, the mind gains freedom from anxiety, envy, and distraction. What once appeared as lagging behind is reframed as deliberate preparation, an essential part of the unfolding process. Each day of consistent action, even when unrecognized, strengthens judgment, enhances resilience, and prepares the individual for challenges that cannot be foreseen. The interplay between persistence and timing illuminates the nature of achievement. A seed planted today may take years to bear fruit, yet its growth is no less real because it is hidden. The work invested in skill, judgment, and resilience compounds quietly until its effects manifest visibly. This principle applies across every domain of life: intellectual mastery, emotional growth, professional competence, or creative expression. Persistence is the vehicle through which potential transforms into realized capability. The mind that internalizes this principle develops patience, perspective, and confidence in the process of development itself. Progress is measured by the cultivation of effort, not by the appearance of immediate results. The illusion of being late arises from a misunderstanding of time and process, a misalignment between perception and reality. Once understood, the perception of delay no longer dictates emotion or self-assessment. Each individual path is unique, and the variables that shape achievement are complex and often invisible. Circumstances differ, preparation varies, resilience develops at different rates, and opportunities arrive unpredictably. Comparing one trajectory to another ignores these subtleties, creating a distorted view of relative progress. The person who appears ahead may have benefited from advantage, timing, or context that is not replicable. Conversely, the path that seems delayed may be constructing capabilities that will ultimately produce greater results. The mind that values process over appearance, persistence over immediacy, and internal development over external validation cultivates a clarity that prevents unnecessary anxiety and fosters purposeful engagement. Each action, taken consistently, compounds into outcomes that align with principle and skill, even if recognition arrives later than anticipated. Ultimately, life rewards those who persist in alignment with principle, regardless of the timing of visible outcomes. External markers may lag behind effort, recognition may arrive late, and results may appear only after prolonged investment. Yet the individual who cultivates patience, consistency, and deliberate practice develops competence, resilience, and character that endure. Progress measured by internal growth and engagement transcends the superficial standards imposed by comparison, circumstance, or societal expectation. The perception of being late or behind is replaced by the understanding that life unfolds in cycles, that persistence compounds, and that character is the ultimate measure of achievement. The illusion of delay fades when effort is consistent, deliberate, and principled, and the trajectory of the individual aligns with enduring values rather than fleeting appearances. Adversity, rather than being an impediment, is a proving ground. It is through challenge that endurance is cultivated and insight is refined. Every difficulty presents an opportunity to exercise patience, self-control, and courage. The person who confronts adversity consciously rather than reacting impulsively or avoiding discomfort strengthens faculties that endure well beyond the immediate challenge. The setbacks that once seemed insurmountable become part of a broader trajectory of development. They are evidence of engagement, not failure. The Stoic perspective situates the locus of control firmly within the individual. It is not external events that define life, but the internal orientation toward them. The way one navigates uncertainty, discomfort, and the unknown becomes the true measure of progress, far more meaningful than any benchmark measured by others. Persistence in obscurity is particularly instructive. Many of life's most significant gains emerge in spaces unseen, moments unrecognized, and periods where effort is neither applauded nor validated publicly. The mind is tempted to equate visibility with progress, yet the cultivation of skill, virtue, and resilience is largely invisible. Each deliberate choice, each act of disciplined practice, each confrontation with challenge quietly shapes competence and judgment. Over time, these cumulative efforts compound, producing internal strength that eventually manifests externally, often unpredictably. Patience becomes not a passive waiting, but an active engagement with the process of self-development. The individual who remains committed in private, who endures the routine and repetition without immediate reward, cultivates capacities that the world cannot yet observe. In this way, feeling behind is not evidence of failure. It is an artifact of perception misaligned with the slow, deliberate unfolding of preparation and growth. Internal resilience is the foundation of a life well lived. It is the capacity to withstand hardship, to maintain equanimity amid challenge, and to navigate uncertainty with clarity and purpose. External markers, wealth, recognition, accolades, may fluctuate, disappear, or fail to provide lasting satisfaction. By contrast, resilience, cultivated through consistent effort and intentional response to adversity, is durable and self-reinforcing. It allows the individual to engage with life proactively, making decisions grounded in principle rather than reaction. Deliberate action, guided by reason and reflection, shapes not only outcomes, but also character. The story of life is written not by circumstance, but by persistent, conscientious engagement with each unfolding moment. Internal development is permanent. External circumstances are ephemeral. The perception of being behind often arises from focusing on others rather than on one's own trajectory. Comparison obscures the value of effort invested, the lessons learned in struggle, and the growth achieved in unseen moments. Life unfolds at the pace of deliberate action, not the rhythm of external timelines. The individual who anchors judgment in personal values, principle, and effort experiences progress independent of external measurement. What is overlooked or unrecognized today may emerge as foundational tomorrow, producing results and satisfaction that were invisible in earlier stages. Stoicism teaches that control lies in these choices, in the cultivation of virtue, judgment, and wisdom. By embracing this perspective, the mind releases the illusion of being behind and aligns effort with enduring measures of progress rather than superficial signals. Every response to adversity is an act of character formation. By choosing reflection over reaction, patience over impatience, and persistence over surrender, the individual molds the self in ways that endure beyond circumstance. The accumulation of these choices, rather than the accumulation of external markers, determines the trajectory of life. Feeling behind is temporary, contingent on comparison and perception. Preparation, patience, and deliberate action are permanent, embedded in character and habit. Each deliberate choice strengthens judgment, reinforces resilience, and contributes to a coherent, meaningful life. What appears as delay or misalignment is often a natural aspect of growth and preparation. The Stoic perspective emphasizes that what truly matters is the cultivation of faculties that persist beyond the ephemeral fluctuations of the external world. Life's narrative is defined not by beginnings, but by endings. A rocky start, a period of perceived lag, or an extended trial does not dictate the quality or meaning of the whole. It is the way one continues, perseveres, and maintains integrity that shapes the final story. Each decision to act deliberately, to engage with effort, and to cultivate skill and virtue, regardless of recognition or reward, is a brushstroke in the painting of a meaningful life. Progress is internal, cumulative, and durable. It is measured by the alignment of action with principle, the endurance of character, and the cultivation of insight. External benchmarks are secondary, internal development is primary. The rhythm of life is defined by deliberate engagement, not by external visibility or comparative success. Epictetus reminds us that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This principle encapsulates the essence of measuring life by internal metrics. External events, challenges, and outcomes are often beyond control, yet the mind's orientation toward them is sovereign. Reaction shapes experience. Persistence, reflection, and deliberate action transform obstacles into opportunities for growth. Each choice, consciously aligned with principle, reinforces character, builds competence, and fortifies resilience. Feeling behind dissolves when attention is directed to what is within control. Preparation, patience, and deliberate engagement define the trajectory of a meaningful life. Ultimately, your story is yours, unfolding according to the pace of courage, discipline, and principle. The external world will continue to present challenges, distractions, and markers that provoke comparison. Yet these are irrelevant to the internal metrics of growth. The individual who cultivates virtue, skill, and resilience navigates life intentionally, measures progress internally, and interprets challenges as opportunities rather than failures. Feeling behind is temporary, character is enduring. Preparation and persistent effort create a trajectory that is steady, cumulative, and meaningful, independent of external approval or timelines. The rhythm of your own engagement, the alignment of effort with principle, and the cultivation of resilience constitute the ultimate measure of life, far surpassing any fleeting public signal or comparison. At the end of the day, life isn't defined by the pace of others, by fleeting markers, or by the shadows of comparison. It is defined by the courage you show in the quiet moments, by the effort you invest when no one is watching, and by the patience you cultivate as your skills, character, and wisdom quietly grow. Every struggle, every setback, every deliberate choice is part of your story, and it is yours alone. Remember, the path unfolds at the pace of your persistence, not the world's applause. Keep moving forward, keep showing up. And when you pause to reflect, recognize the strength you've built along the way. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to watch one of the suggested videos on the screen. Each one dives deeper into the principles, practices, and mindset that help you live deliberately, grow steadily, and embrace the Stoic path. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. Your presence here is a step toward mastery of your mind, your actions, and your life.